Welcome back, guys, for another week of power rankings with the Ice Hockey Aussies. Now, this is the second to last week, so yeah, not too long left in the season. We're almost done, almost wrapped up. So yeah, it's been fun. It'll be sad once it's over, but hey, here we are for the second to last rankings. And to get us started, we got Jaden with his 32.
Yeah, pretty easy 32. The Anaheim Ducks don't win a game this week, um, so no reason to move them on. I don't even think they took a point from this week. Actually, they did against Arizona, but yeah, not much to say. Just Bedard race, tanked like a god, I guess, if you want to say that, and then on to next season, really.
Yeah, I mean they put up some interesting games. Like they put up effort and fight in some most of these games this week. They played Calgary, took it right to them, although they got heavily outshot. Played Edmonton, they were in the game most of it. Arizona, again, they went to overtime and got the loss in overtime. So they were in the games, but they got the results they wanted. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think it's pretty much game over for them. But you like
Mm.
that at least there was some effort in their performances.
Yeah, well, yeah, some of the games this season have been pretty atrocious, but other games they have shown up. So 50-50 on if you're going to get a good game from a Anaheim supporter fan.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, they'll just be hoping that Chicago and Columbus can get a win or two more than them in these last couple of games and push them right to the bottom.
Alrighty, on to 31 with you.
All right. So at 31, I've got just moving down one. It was Columbus Blue Jackets. Just we saw some decency from them in previous weeks, but they were playing some pretty competitive hockey. And I say this on the back of just their last two games. They got slaughtered by the Rangers, and they got slaughtered even worse by the Devils. So yeah, not great from them. They started the week off well with a win against Ottawa in OT, but it was all downhill from there. They got outshot 50-26 in the 4-2 loss against the Maple Leafs, and then just got absolutely buried by the Devils and the Rangers. So yeah, I just felt like they had to move down a position, as
Yeah,
you've done the same.
yeah, I've done the same. It makes sense. They played 4 games, so equal most in the league, but they conceded the most. They have the worst goal differential in the league. They have the equal most goals conceded in the league this week, and they have the worst shot differential this week in the league by a substantial margin. I think it's by at least 20. So the negative 56. I think the next highest is negative 36 with Detroit. So
Yeah.
yeah, not many two saving graces for this team. Besides looking on for next year, that's really it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, it's pretty much who can finish bottom and end up with the most points. Most percentage points to get Bedard at this point. So
Mm.
yeah,
Well, they did sell out the goalie,
all right.
so hopefully they can address that during the off season, get some of the injuries back, and then they hopefully a little bit better firepower house team for next year. I don't know if they would qualify for a wild card spot with just how strong the Metro is, but at least be competitive.
Yeah,
Or,
and that's all you can ask for
mm,
over what they put up this year.
yeah. Alrighty, on to 30. Got team just swapping with them, the Chicago Blackhawks for me. And, they've been playing actually better. I feel like they've been playing better, honestly, since the trade deadline. But they beat Calgary this week. They get shut out by Vancouver. Then they get 7-3 by Seattle. I feel like they're still competing in the games, even though they're getting blown out sometimes on the scoreboard. I feel like they're still playing somewhat reasonable on ice, and I feel that's kind of prevalent with the Calgary 4-3 win. And so that's why they obviously take that spot from Columbus this week.
I think what's impressive about this team is you could expect So, like, you look at Anaheim and Columbus and, their goals against this season. I know I know Chicago's near them, but you look at the team that Anaheim has, you look at the team that Columbus has, and you sort of go, I know Columbus has have had a lot of injuries, but I think their squads are definitely a lot stronger than what Chicago has, right? And
Mhm.
yeah, even after the trade deadline where, they get rid of Patrick Kane and Max Domi and they I mean Jonathan Taylor's come back now, but he was out for a long time as well. They had basically nobody, essentially. I
Yeah.
would have expected them to finish so much lower than Columbus and Anaheim, and they're pretty much neck and neck with them,
Well,
so
they
like
should have finished lower than Columbus for sure with the firepower they have
100%.
at the front line, and Columbus had the better goaltending tandem. I know they've traded one of those pieces out at the trade deadline,
Mm.
but they should have been much better with where they were. Um, that's for sure. I'm not sure about Anaheim because I always thought Anaheim were going to be bad this year. So
Well, so did I. I
yeah,
just I just mean squad wise, right? I
yeah,
just mean if you look
I
at
get what you mean.
Chicago's
Yeah,
squad, their squad's the weakest in the league by
mm,
far.
yeah.
So, my expectation was for them to finish bottom by far.
I guess
So,
that probably shows they
to
got the better coach. Maybe it's like it's what Arizona's shown all season. Probably one of the worst
yeah,
rosters of teams, and they win games out of nowhere. So probably comes down to coaching, really.
yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely a good signs. I mean, it's going to be a long rebuild for them, but at least you can say that they've been competitive throughout the season, given how weak their roster is. So if they can add some pieces and draft well, yeah, the effort's definitely there.
Mm. No, I agree.
All right, moving on to 29, I've got same position as last week, the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, I've done the same thing.
Yeah, it's just, what can you say about them? They're pretty much similar to the other two. I don't think they got a win this week. They lost all three. Yeah, 6-1 to Edmonton, 6-2 to the Avs, and they had a 4-3 overtime loss to the Avs. So against those two teams across the three games, I don't think you're really expecting much else. Um, but they take a point, which is a positive, I guess. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting them to do any more than what they did
Mm.
this week.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I hope that all NHL people that basically work in the NHL in regards to team-based managers, GMs, etc., coaches, can you just please look at defenders and go points don't matter? Like freaking Carlson's going to hit 100 points possibly this season. He's on 98 at the moment, but he has a negative 19.
Hmm.
You got a defender hitting 100 points, and you're still like bottom of the league. So can you just please,
Yeah.
for my sake, get defenders who defend. My God,
Yep.
that's
But it
my
seems to
biggest.
be going the other way.
Yeah.
They seem to be more interested in the guys that can put up points than the guys that can defend,
Well,
and
if if
it's
your
crazy.
if your defender has 32 more points than the next highest in your team, there is something structurally wrong there.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna say like that should not be happening any day of the week. But yeah, that's my take on San Jose there. Pretty much sums up their
And
year.
he's a minus 19. I think that's
Yeah,
the part that I struggle with, right? Like
he
he's
put
only
up
got
100 points
25
and yeah,
power play points.
yeah.
Yeah, 25 power play points, which means that, what, he got a plus in 73 of his goals. He's conceded 92 even strength points, basically.
And look, I get it. You're in a bad team. He's probably playing most bigger ice time, but honestly, for a defender, defense wise, it comes down to you a lot as well, not just the forwards back checking. And a lot of time when they
Oh,
concede when
exactly.
he's on the ice, he's up forward doing some play.
Yeah.
He's done some
Yeah.
really bad turnover plays. Yeah.
Yeah, he gets caught out a lot.
Mm.
And yeah, it is. It's a worry. Like it's great season saying, "Hey, I put up 98 points," but it's better when you say, "Hey, I put up 98 points and I actually helped my team." You know, if honestly, if he had put up 98 points and he was a plus 15 in a team that's absolutely dog shit, I would have probably been like, do you know what? Yeah,
Mm.
cool. He can't do it all, but yeah, it's negative 19. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong there. It is pretty tough. I guess we will move on to 28 for me. The 28 position does not move. It is the Montreal Canadiens, and I'll just put
Yeah,
it in there. Yeah, so another team that
same
doesn't
here.
move. Yeah, I could not much to really work on to get them moving. They had pretty much what was it 1 out of 3. They got destroyed by Toronto. Doubled the shots, 7-1. They destroy in somewhat Washington 6-2, and then they get at the start of the week they were 5-0 shut out by Detroit of all teams. So yeah, it's just been that little yo-yo below 500 type of season. I know they've had some sort of like injuries throughout the season as well and rotating players because the only player that's got 80 games is Nick Suzuki. Next highest is 75, and then it dwindles. Like their teams are a few players in the 60s and 50s, so they haven't had players that really played all season, which is a big thing. So they've had injuries. They don't really have a squad. I would say they had a one line, and that line got injured at points. So yeah, I just what more can you really expect from this roster with those injuries? And yeah, it's kind of where they were meant to be, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think uh, anyone expected them to be any higher. I think if you did, probably take a look at yourself and ask yourself why you thought they would be any better. Um, they're definitely early on in their rebuild, and they still have a lot to do before they become relevant again. I still think they'll be down the bottom end next year as well, and potentially the year after, depending on what they do, um, in the draft and in free agency, etc. So yeah, like this isn't a surprise to me. I expected them to be here, and yeah, to me, I think the one solid thing is that they've shown glimpses in a few of their younger lads that, yeah, okay, these guys are here for the long haul. They've got potential. Let's just hone in on that and let's build around them. So, yeah, it's good signs. But now they've just got to add the correct pieces, get that carry price contract dealt with however you can, I guess, and then yeah, go from there.
Alrighty, 27 for you.
27. Another team for me not moving this week. I got the Arizona Coyotes.
Yes, same thing. No movement there. So 3 in a row, no movements. And
Yeah, no, it's what do you do? I don't think they won one game this week against the Ducks. So yeah, not overly that great lately. I think they've won one game in their last 10. Um, they got absolutely smashed by Seattle early on in the week, 8-1. And then they bounced back against Seattle again with a much better performance, but ultimately still losing 4-2. So yeah. Yeah, couldn't really do anything with them. There was no way they were going to move down with the way the other teams had performed, but there was no way they could really move up either, even though a couple of teams just below them, sorry, just ahead of them, had really poor performing weeks as well.
mm, yeah, no, the saving grace was for them. Clayton Keller's come into his own. Over a point a game this year. 85 points, 80 games so far. He's really stepped up. Love his game. Absolute star. Hopefully they can keep him. Hopefully they can sort out this stadium issue with Phoenix. I know they're putting a lawsuit against Phoenix, City of Phoenix, for their filing in the courts for 2 point something billion. I think it was 2.3. Um, so hopefully they get that sorted out. One thing I did want to point out though, for a team that's down here, the team that really didn't have a roster, they have two goalies, in Connor Ingram and Vermelka, both over 900 in save percentage, .907 and .902. Uh,
Yeah.
which is insane when you think about it for a team that with this roster where they are in the standings that they have two goalies that have done that. So that is a good another saving grace for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, especially because when you think of them, like Connor Ingram, I mean, he's it's what his first season of playing any real minutes. Um, but you didn't really think anything of him at the start of the year, and then you look at it and go, okay, he's averaging 3.3 goals a game, but he's got a 907 save percentage, which is pretty good. So
Hmm.
he's yeah, it's interesting considering they get absolutely peppered for shots at times. Um, and the defense can leave them out high and dry. So yeah, to have a positive save percentage like they do at both of them quite young ages, they're both only 26 years old. Um, yeah, it doesn't look too bad on that end. I know there's a couple of teams that are going to be playing playoffs that are still looking at their goaltenders going, "Oh, this is probably one of our only worries at the moment is that we don't have a good goaltender,
Hmm.
and Arizona have two goaltenders performing really, really well.
Yeah, just like on those goalies, like their like average of shots per their games is like they're receiving about 35, 36 shots a game on
Mm-hmm.
average. So they've done really well this season. I think that's a really good standing out point.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that.
Alrighty,
Uh,
26. I have team, yeah, Washington Capitals. I felt like I wanted to move them down because but the teams below just didn't prove enough to warrant it. I already had them lower than you did last week at 26. You had them 25, and look, they've just been very ordinary for a long time now. They don't win a game this week, losing to the Rangers. They lose to Montreal 6-2, and then they lose to Florida. They don't really get blown out in the games besides the Montreal game, but there's just not much to love. Like they concede 15 goals in 3 games. Like they take negative 25 in shot differential. They only score 6 goals, so averaging 2 goals a game. And I think they only scored 2 goals in each game. Yeah, 2-2-2. So there's not much to like here. I don't really like what I see on the ice. I know there were sellers at the deadline. So and Ovechkin is a point per game player. He's got 42 goals for the season, going for that title. I guess that's really the only saving grace you have from being a Capitals fan at this point.
yeah, I think it was a hard-ish week for them. They played the New York Rangers, very good side. They played Florida, really, really pushing for that, final wild card spot. Um, it's a loss against Montreal. They beat Montreal, and it's completely different. And you could look at this and go, oh well, they made the most of it. Um, if they but they also get outshot, right? They get outshot every single game. They got outshot 37 to 24, 32 to 26, 34 to 28. It's And you say they were sellers at the deadline, which they were. They got rid of a couple of players, but really they only got rid of their free agents, right? The players that they probably weren't going to have a chance to re-sign.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'm really disappointed for this team. I know they had a lot of injuries this year, but overall, they shouldn't be as low as they are. And it does pain me because I look at it and go, Where to next year? Because I can't see them getting any better."
Yeah, like they do have still some really good players like signed on. Like obviously they got Ovechkin, they got all the stapled names they've had for a long time: Backstrom, Kuznetsov, Oshie, uh, and I do like Dylan Strome, who they've signed long term. So that is and they obviously have Carlson as well. My issue with them is just like you're looking at their plus minuses for the season. Like Van Riemsdyk, only 23 points in the season out of 75 games. He's a plus 10. But you look at the big players like Backstrom, 36 games. He's a negative 24. It's a negative .66 a game. which is horrendous. And he used to be such a great player. I know he's had injury problems and etc. But that's really bad. Ovechkin, your highest point scorer is -14, and a lot of his points can come on the power play there, with 25 points. So that's my concern with them, is that goal differential on their plus minuses is really bad throughout the team, and their bottom liners essentially are better on the plus minus than the top liners.
Yeah, and look, this is the reason why I think that they're pretty much done, and this is it. I can't see them coming back from it. They have 40% of their cap. It's more than four. It's 40, what, 42-ish% of their cap is taken up by four players. 30 is the youngest of them. 37, 35, 33, and 30. And then if you want, you can add TJ Oshie in it, who almost makes it 50% of their cap space, and he's 36.
Hmm.
So pretty much half of their cap space is taken up by five players
And
who are all at the back end of their careers.
they all, somewhat in some degree, have a like no trade clause or no movement clause. I
Yeah.
believe like they all have like a 15 or 10 no trade team clauses at the end of this year, at least. So it makes it a little bit harder to wheel and deal them if they were going to go down that route as well.
Oh, exactly. And, the contracts that they've signed, Alex Ovechkin, not that I would say they would, but I know a lot of people are going to go, yeah, well, look at him, look at the goal scorer. Anyone would take that. But are you really taking a 38-year-old Alex Ovechkin for $9.5 million with 3 years left on his contract? No. Nicholas Backstrom, who's been injury plagued a little bit over the last couple of years, at 9.2 with 2 years left on his contract at 35 years old? No. TJ Oshie, 2 years left at 5.7 at 36? Probably not. Like Carlson's probably the best of the lot of them, and he's 33. Like
Hmm.
with $8 million cap hit. It's yeah. I honestly, for Washington, unfortunately, I think you're not really going to be anything until after these players have moved on, and their contracts have sort of come to an end, and I don't think you're going to be able to make playoffs in the next couple of years. I know that could be a big call, and it could come back next year, and someone could be like, "You remember that time you said they would never make playoffs, and they made it the very next year?" But I just don't see it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely hard to see.
Mm.
All right,
All
moving
right,
on.
let's
25.
move on. 25, another team I don't see making the playoffs anytime soon. So you're not the only ones in the Metro Washington, because these guys are going to be joining you. Philadelphia Flyers.
Alrighty, just having a look where I have them. Yep, that is where I have them, just dropping down one position.
Yeah, they were starting to look alright, playing pretty competitive in most games, getting some results. They weren't terrible. They were competitive against the Penguins, competitive against St. Louis. Um, they were competitive-ish against Dallas. And then obviously had the 4-0 drubbing against New York today. But yeah, look, it's not the worst I've seen, but losing four straight, um, compared to what Detroit did this week, they definitely had to move down for me. I don't really expect too much more other than the fact that they do come to play most nights. They are aggressive, they are physical, although they are sometimes over the top physical. But the one thing you
Deloria.
can say for them, yeah, yeah, cough, cough, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If that guy
Oh,
was in the streets,
oh
he'd
yeah, and
be
Lemieux
locked
these
up.
days, and Lemieux.
Oh,
uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
like he's got
But
78
yeah,
games played. He's only got 12 points, 6 goals, 6 assists. Like, I'm sorry, there's better kids in the AHL that can perform better. I know he's got a certain type of role. I just don't think you need it personally. I think that that era is done and dusted of that. enforcer type role where you basically your only role is to hit, and that's my problem with them is I feel like that's what they've done. Like you look a
Well, I
lot.
feel
Oh,
like you've
yeah.
got to be a Wilson, don't you? You got to be a Tom Wilson,
Mm,
almost, if you're going to be like that, right? Like you've got to be able to play as
mm,
well as be that big, strong, physical player who can be like, you want to run your mouth? Well, I'll run you into the ground.
yeah.
Um,
There should be no
you,
such thing as
yeah,
enforcer. It should be power forward as
mm,
the key that goes under that name. But they got like no good plus minus players. The saving grace, Carter Hart is a 907 save percentage. He's played majority of the games this season with 15. I would say that Sanderstrom, sorry, is been very underwhelming for their backup. He's only played 19 games, con- concedes 3.7 on goals against on average, and he's only a .88 save percentage. So they need a backup, or they're just gonna have to keep riding Hart. And if he gets injured, GG. And they need to sort out. I know they need players and stuff, but they got like no players really in the plus and the plus minuses. There's what Noah Cates and a couple others, and that's really it. So
yeah. And
hmm,
I don't think that's going to get any better for them. Unfortunately, I'll just point that straight
nah,
out. I
no, I
think
agree.
they they need a lot more. I think they've got to obviously, Carter Hart, he's when he's at his best and he's got something in front of him, wow, he could be a superstar, but it's not going to get any better, is it? Like anytime soon. They don't really have anyone that I can see on this list. I think Ristolainen's a UFA. He will be gone at the end of the year, but he's just an offensive defenseman. I can't see anything here that I'm like, yep, I can see these guys carrying these, really, really turning up next season to give them a better season. They'd have to somehow draft stupidly well, hope that someone in the draft is NHL ready. It's almost like they'd need to get Connor Bedard, but then I'd still be worried about their defensive end.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, exactly.
like
They need a
yeah,
lot. They need a lot. That's for sure.
that's for sure.
Alrighty,
But yeah,
25, 24, sorry, for me. Detroit Red Wings, they just hop over Philadelphia for me. So no big
yeah,
movement,
I'm not
and
huge. I'm the same.
you're the same. So yeah, there wasn't really much to move on here as well. Like they go 2 out of 4 this week. They beat Toronto on a really good win. They 5-0 Montreal, and then it just kind of falls apart. They go 7-6 shootout loss against Buffalo, then 5-1 by Pittsburgh. Like they play better. They're still obviously got their issues in regards to conceding goals and just not that consistent team. They've done the tank well since the trade deadline, or basically since losing those back to backs on against Ottawa. And like they got some saving graces in regards to like their roster and everything. I feel like they're going to come back next year for that wild card spot and probably snag it. Personally, that's how I feel will probably happen. Like Larkin's still there; he's a point per game player, but they do need some uh, added goal scoring. Like player they brought in this year, Perron, 23 goals. Uh, Next highest is yeah, so they only got three players with 20 goals or more this year in Kubalik, Perron, and Larkin. The rest are lower than that. There's only what 4 in 10 to 19. So they need other ends of scoring, I would say, and they need to work out something about their goaltending or defense to help the goaltending because none of them's over 900%.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like Huso was touted as the big off season get. Um, I still have somewhat faith that he can sort of turn it around not like next season.
Yeah, well, it's
Just
26 wins, 20 losses, and 7 OT losses. Like it's basically 26, 27. That's
yeah,
it's not too bad.
no, and like at the end of the day, 3.05, just below 900. He doesn't exactly have the greatest team in front of him, especially finishing the season. Um, So yeah, I think give give Yzerman another off season, probably sort out some of the defensive worries. They do have quite a young defense as well, with a couple of young lads coming through in Cedar and Edvinson. Um, but yeah, I think if he could get a big defensive defenseman in the off season potentially. Moritz Cedar, he's been okay this year, but had a bit of a down year on what he sort of first brought to the team in his first year. So yeah, I expect to see him bounce back next year a bit stronger as well. So I think all in all, they've definitely got the pieces. I think they've got the GM to sort of get those other pieces that they need and require, as you said, that goal scorer. Probably just getting a bit more solid on the defensive blue line as well. And then, yeah, it's always going to be hard next year because the Metro's not going away anytime soon. Um, so it's not like I'm not going to turn around and say, yeah, I could see them making the playoffs next year, like, or sorry, yeah, to guarantee that they'll get a wild card spot next year. I think they'll be in contention next year. I think they'll go a lot further next year than this year. I think they won't be sellers at the deadline next year. I think they'll get to the deadline and they'll still be in with a good chance and they'll actually like their chances. I just don't know who falls away, right? Because you've still got Ottawa, Buffalo, Florida, Tampa, Toronto, and Boston to get through.
I'd say
It's
Boston fall off and probably Tampa. Those would be my guesses of the fall offs.
yeah,
But you
but
got
then you've
you got
still
upcoming
got
Florida and
Toronto
Buffalo.
and Ottawa, all right? Like Ottawa,
Yeah,
Buffalo, Florida, Toronto. Like you still got four teams and then Detroit. Like
but
it's not going to be that simple, but I definitely feel like they'll be better than this year towards the end of the season.
alrighty, on to 23.
All right, 23, we've got. Oh, I had to look at that again because I was like, really? But I know why, but it also feels wrong. Um, a team that's probably been one of the better teams in this end stretch, so it does seem a bit odd, but it's the Vancouver Canucks dropping three places. Um, Not really anything they're doing, right? Like you've done the same, so I don't feel too bad, but it was like, how do I keep Buffalo, Winnipeg below Vancouver? They're both pushing really hard for that final wildcard spot in both of their divisions, conferences.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I don't feel like Vancouver's done anything wrong. They've played spoil against who was it, Calgary, but yeah, I don't feel like they deserve to drop three positions, but they had to drop three positions, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, it was just
Really odd.
how their rankings were last week, to what teams did this week. They do have a good squad. They are playing good. It's one of the teams that could easily bounce back next year in regards to the type of squad they have with Pedersen, who's 1 point away from 100. JT Miller is a point a game. You got Quinn Hughes point a game. Kuzmenko, great pickup, point a game. Um, so they've got
And
this.
re-signed.
Yeah. So they've got the squad. Uh, you know, can Thatcher Demko be that goaltender? He's 900 this year, but can he be that goaltender that carries you all the way? And yeah, like I've got my gripes with how they've handled things this year with regards to their coach. And then it's interesting with the Bo Horvat situation at the moment. The whole fans basically hate him now because of what he said. I'm not sure if you heard that, but when he was asked
No, I didn't.
how he enjoys playing in front of the New York Islanders fans, is like, yeah, well, it's I'm going for playoffs, and it's like he's like, yeah, well, it's way better than Vancouver.
Yeah.
So Vancouver fans hate him at this point, but yeah, no, it's just interesting that the season they've had. I haven't liked how they've handled some things management wise. I don't even know if they're going to keep Pedersen and Hughes at the end of their contracts. It would be very, very interesting to see. But I think they're playing better at this end stretch. They, go 500. They play spoiler Calgary, but they don't. They beat the teams they should in Chicago, and they competed against Calgary and beat them. But then the topper teams, LA and Seattle, they lose, and that's kind of sums up their year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Alrighty,
All right.
22, St. Louis.
Yep. Yeah, that's me there. I think you can definitely tell that we're getting to the butt end of the year because I think we have not had a difference in
Oh,
our rankings.
you're
So
right.
that's impressive. That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of stable. It's St. Louis definitely been playing better this week and probably last week as well. They've done somewhat decent in regards to it. Like they are 6-3-1 in their last 10. They go this week and I think they played one of the best games, the shootout loss against Boston. I thought they played really well. They win against Philly. They OT win against the Rangers, another great win, and a great game. And then they 5-3 in a close game against Minnesota loss. So honestly, it says 2 wins, 2 losses. I feel like it's a really good week. They could have probably, if they were played better earlier in the season, they'd probably be higher in the rankings.
Mm.
But from the people that are above them, it's actually pretty hard to knock them down at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at what they've done over the last few weeks as well, and it's been really positive. They've been above 500 pretty much every week for the last 3 weeks. Um, so yeah, I mean that's what you want, right? If you're St. Louis, you just want to show because I've said it many times before. I know they sold Tarasenko, I know they sold it Ryan O'Reilly, but they've got some good young players that are still in their sort of prime years, between 25 and 30. So they're definitely geared to bounce back next year and go again. Um, the biggest question is going to be is what can they add in the off season, and can they fix that god awful defensive goaltender of theirs in Jordan Binnington.
Yeah,
I
I don't
think
know how you
that's their
fix that.
biggest issue. Yeah, I think that's their biggest issue. Like you've got a guy that I get that he won them a cup. How did he win them a cup? Um, But like I just feel like that's their biggest issue at the moment. Like he causes so much trouble. And I just feel like he causes so much disruption within that team as well. So uh, if I was them, I would potentially look at getting a replacement just so that they can be like, all right,
Yeah,
look, it's just not working out. Catch you later. And then
I, I'd like to see
yeah,
them target a team like Arizona and try and get like a Vemelka. Like that's like a young goalie, like a younger style goalie that's up and coming. That's where I would go with St. Louis. In regards to replacing
yeah.
Bennington, that's what I would do.
Yeah, and a bloke that doesn't blow up every time he concedes a few goals and cracks the shits. So yeah, I think St. Louis. If you're a St. Louis fan, you've got a lot to be optimistic about because they do have the pieces to turn this around pretty quickly. And their performances of late show that as well. So I'll be very interested and I'll be watching very closely to see what they do in the off season.
Mm.
But moving on to 21, but a team that's dropped a few positions, but it's more they lost a couple of games and they've sort of been mathematically kicked out of playoffs now. So it's the Ottawa Senators. Their season has come to an end, and it's kind of depressing because I was really hopeful on these guys at the start of the year, and they've played some really exciting hockey at times. They've played some really great hockey, but then they've also shat the bed very often. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I think that's my
game over
problem
for them.
with them is that they play really good hockey and then still manage to lose. Like that like
Yeah.
they almost double the shots in the Florida game and yet they lose 7-2.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like they go to OT and lose an OT to Columbus. They took it to Carolina, which I'll give them credit for, and then they beat Tampa, who have been an interesting team for the past since the trade deadline. But it's just like I feel like they play really good hockey and then like they lose 5-2 or something like that, and it's just like, well, what's happening? And
Yeah.
it's been my gripe with them all season. It's just like, well, what are you? Show me. Like I can see what you want to be, but then you're not doing it. So I'm keen to see what they can do next year. This year's a big disappointment, especially after the moves they've made, and like they brought in DeBrincat and whatnot. Feel like they should have done better with Giroux, DeBrincat, like Kachuk. Like their squad's good. Uh, their goaltending, they got Forsberg who's over 900, Talbot who's been playing um majority is at 900. Like sure they could get a little bit better from the goaling, but it's just that defense, and they got Chikrin, got the player they needed, and
Yeah, I mean, he's
it, yeah,
been out for a few weeks now, though, as
yeah.
well. So, that doesn't help the situation.
But
Um,
I'm just speaking for
but
next
yeah,
year. Like they brought in the player that should help um boost that defense, and I know it's only played 12 games for them. And so hopefully next year it turns out like, hopefully they get new owners with big pockets, and they don't have to worry about anything like that, and then they can just focus on what's on the ice.
yeah. Look, I I'm pretty hopeful for Ottawa. I think that they've got, the Chikrin trade was really good for them. They get 2 years with him. And I really do think if they can just get, probably a defensive D man, probably similar to New Jersey in some ways, where it's just you've got you've got the players who can control the puck and control your power play. Now go and get a player that's going to throw himself in front of a puck, who's going to help your goaltenders, and then possibly, they could potentially go out and get a better goaltender. But I really do think it comes down to getting getting that blue line sorted. If they do that, they'll go a long way next year, and I'll probably back them quite heavily again to take one of those final wild card spots.
Alrighty. Moving on to 20. This will be controversial for everybody on what I've done here, I'm guessing. But I've got a team dropping out of the top 16, dropping like a falling star, but they're not the stars. It is Tampa Bay Lightning.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, I've dropped them quite a lot as well. One position higher though at 19.
All right.
But yeah,
I just haven't been sold on them since the trade deadline. Uh, like I knew Kucherov has like 111 points this season. They got like what Braden Point's a point of game player, Stamkos point of game player. Like they've got the Vasilevsky in the net, but they just have not been great. I feel like since the deadline. I know they've secured playoffs. They got nothing to play for, but you take this momentum in and it's going to be horrible. Like they lose 6-3 to the Rangers on a back-to-back. They lose 6-1 to the Islanders, and then they lose to the Ottawa Senators 7-4. They negative 33 in shot differential. They concede 19, which is equal alongside like a team like Columbus on how many goals they've conceded this week. They got negative 11 in goal differential, which is what the second worst in the league. Besides Columbus and equal with Philly. So like that's the names I'm throwing out is Columbus and Philly, and look where they are in the standings. So that's why I've done
yeah,
what I've done. Don't like what they've been doing. I think it's been pretty average. Like they sold the farm for a player. Geez, yeah, Tanner Janot. He's played 20 games. He's got 1 goal, 3 assists. He's a negative
yeah,
six. Like, congrats.
yeah,
Like, you got
yeah.
your player, I
Well
guess.
done. Yeah,
Um,
right.
so yeah,
Insane.
I like generally teams that win the cup or do good in the playoffs have a streak are definitely better than 500, and they're generally on some sort of streak in the last 10, 20 something games, and I don't feel like that's where they are.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Isn't it? Like you look at last week, for example, they went 3-0. They conceded one goal and they scored 14. And you're like, oh, okay. And look, against some good teams, New York Islanders, they played Carolina, and they played Washington. Not a great team, but still. But the week before that, they went, they lost all four. And, they lost against teams like Montreal and Ottawa. Um, New Jersey and Boston in there as well, but still, like, not great. And essentially, you look at their last 10 games, and yeah, they've won three, lost seven. And it's not a good look. And I know they've had playoff spot secured for a long time. They probably weren't any real chance of catching up to Toronto in a sense. But yeah, like I have to agree with you on the front of you don't want to be going into the playoffs with this type of form, right? Like you're going up against the Toronto Maple Leafs that haven't made it out of the first round in a long time. They're geared up and ready. They look like they're ready to go, and you're going in on the potentially the worst form out of any playoff
Mhm.
team,
Yeah, I
and
don't
it's
think
just yeah.
a team in the last 20 years has won the cup with like going into it with like a below 500 run. So
I'm looking at all the playoff teams, and the only other team under 500 in the playoffs right now is Carolina.
mm,
That's
yeah,
it,
that's it.
and they have 9 points in the last 10. Tampa has six. So it's like they're well off of where they should be. I don't know what to take of it. I think if it was any other team, like Winnipeg Jets, we saw their fall off that they had, and it was really concerning. They've pulled it back enough to look like they're going to make playoffs. But if it was them, this would be stupidly concerning, and I think everyone would pretty much have ridden them off in the first round. But considering it's Tampa, I think it's a little bit more reserved in a sense that it's Tampa Bay. The players you just mentioned, they're stupidly talented. They've got the pieces. They could rock up in the first round and just go bang. So I
Um,
won't go
yeah,
too crazy on them yet, but they
uh,
definitely had to drop in the rankings.
yeah. I guess my last take is that I'm getting like Columbus sweep vibes. um, that's that's all I'm getting. So yeah, I'll leave it with that.
Toronto fans are fucking loving you right now. They're just like, don't, don't give me hope. Don't give me hope.
Alrighty, not
All
20 for
right.
you, 19 for me. Or maybe
20 for
19.
me. I maybe, yeah, probably. Um, it's interesting considering these guys are ahead of another team in the wild card spot, but yeah, they're their own worst enemy right now because they should be holding that wild card spot, and it's the Calgary Flames.
Oh, okay.
They let me down. They they let me down, man. I'm sorry,
I,
but
I wasn't sure if you're gonna go with them or the other one. Uh, yeah,
nah, they
they
let me
they,
down.
they let you down. I said Winnipeg, you said Flames. So far it's looking in my favor. But yeah,
Well, how do you? I know Vancouver's been better, man, but you lose to Vancouver in shootout, and you lose to Chicago without even going to. Oh, they didn't even take a point,
yeah, they didn't take a point.
man. Like you think about it, even just a win against Chicago, don't even need the extra point against Vancouver, and they're probably the favorite to go through, right? Like you look at it and go, all right, if they won that game against Chicago, they're on 92 points, and they've got to play Winnipeg. Their next game is Winnipeg. Brilliant. How good's that? Their fate is in their own hands. They win that game against Winnipeg, and they're basically in the playoffs. But they lose to Chicago and then drop points against Vancouver. I don't know. I'm, yeah, frustrated. If you're a Calgary fan, I'm not a Calgary fan, and I'm frustrated. So I can only imagine
You're ripping
how
the
Calgary
jerseys you
fans are
don't
feeling.
have. Like, God damn
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
God damn, man! If I had a Calgary jersey right now, that shit would be burnt.
Well, I just like to say,
Very
well
frustrating.
done Chicago for playing spoilers. So far, we
Hmm.
still wait to see mathematically how it all turns out, but so far it looks like they played spoilers, and it's probably the biggest thing
Yeah.
they've done this season. But
Oh,
yeah,
mate, all I can say, Chicago and Vancouver fans right now, if you got Winnipeg fans as
oh, sorry, you cut out for a second there.
w- I said Chicago and Vancouver, if you've got Winnipeg fans, they owe you a they owe you a beer.
Oh,
Okay?
hell
That's
yeah.
all I can say.
Yeah,
Oh,
alrighty. We'll move on to my 18. It is the Nashville Predators. This is the team
oh
I
yeah.
didn't know if you thought maybe you had them at 20. I'm pretty
I
high on
I
this
have them
team,
at
honestly.
18 as well.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I I'm I think I know where you're going with this as well, because I almost feel like 18's too low, but it comes down to the results that they've gotten, Phil.
Yeah, exactly right. Like obviously we've talked about it before. Hard run to the end. Dallas, Vegas, Carolina, Winnipeg this week. Vegas was on a back to back. They start out losing to Dallas. OT win against Vegas on that back to back. They 3-0'd Carolina, and then they got 0-2'd by Winnipeg, which was a disappointing game to watch. Like they didn't really show up, and there was points early on. I think they were 1-0 down, or maybe 0-0, where Winnipeg did some horrible, horrible turnovers in the defensive zone, basically handing him Nashville some free slot shots. And I just went, if this goes in, Nashville win, and it didn't. And I feel like that was the changing moment for them for me this season. And look, I still rate them. I still think they're playing amazing hockey. It's just they needed to play a little bit better at the start of the season, really, because I could see them playing playoff hockey. And oh, it's a shame. I would have liked to see them in the playoffs, but I'm struggling to see it now.
Yeah, and I mean, look, they've been impressive, man. I think since the deadline, they've been even more impressive. One thing I'll say is the fact that they're still in the wild card race. Like with the loss to Winnipeg, it's probably not going to happen for them now, but they're still there. 16, their last 16 games. I'm also talking about their next three as well. So their last 13 that they've played and the three still to come, they have played one team that is either, one team that's completely out of playoffs. Every other team has been either in the playoff hunt and still is right now, or is actually in the playoffs.
Mm,
So 12 of the 13 games they've already played have been against playoff contending teams. The last three games they're about to play, playoff contending teams. That is one hell of a finish, especially when you're looking at teams like Edmonton with the run home they've got, and they've played freaking Anaheim, Arizona, San Jose, all of those bottom end teams. They've played them 10 times in the last 16 games. And even Calgary to a sense, they had Chicago, which they freaking lost to, and they played a couple of other easier teams. Not Nashville. Nashville's
mm.
last 16 games, difficult, man, absolutely difficult, and they're still in the hunt. So I'm very impressed with what they've done, and it's why I struggled having them low. I would have loved to have them in the top 16. I was really hoping that they'd pull it off and get a wild card spot. But it's an impressive season. I know they're not going to make playoffs, and that's disappointing and all the rest of that. But if you're a Nashville fan, you sold at the deadline, and you still almost made the wild card with one of the hardest run homes in the league.
Yeah.
Be
Well,
proud of that. That's all I
there's
can
a
say.
few things I'd like to add for the Nashville is one of the reasons I like this team a lot. Like I know there were sellers they got rid of, I know one of the key defenders and whatnot. But I feel like they aced the trade deadline. But what I would like to say is like
100%.
they are an actual team. Like this is different
Mhm,
from teams like Edmonton, Toronto, in some respects where like it's just like full firepower and then that's it. Um, like they got no point a game players this season.
mhm,
They the highest point scorer at the moment is Roman Yossi, who is a defender, um,
mhm,
with 59 in 67 games. I would like to say that their goaltending amazing. I'm a big fan of UC Saros. Both of them point 2.7 goals against a game and 0.918 save percentage. They've had fantastic seasons in Saros and Lankinen. Obviously, Saros is playing 62 games, obviously bearing the brunt.
mhm,
And the other thing I would like to say, they picked up, they've found a gem in Tommy Novak, third rounder. He's basically a point a game, 41 points, 48 games this season. Uh, he only played 27 games last year and had 7 points, and he's come into his own. He was a point a game in the AHL. He's come into the NHL and he's been basically a point a game. He's almost got 20 goals already. Um,
mhm.
so that's looking really good for Nashville. I'm really keen to see what they do next year if they don't make the playoffs mathematically. Or coming up, but like I said, it was just a little too late. But with picking up that Novak and whatnot, and having that goaltending, I feel like they're going to be sound. And they got new GM and whatnot. I think they're sound for the future.
Yeah, for sure. They're definitely gonna be built. They've got so many draft picks over the next 3 years. It's not funny as well. So
Mm.
I expect even if they're not, yeah, if even if they're not back in a playoff spot next year, they're they're going to be building to something pretty quickly. So, um, yeah, I think it's all pretty good signs for Nashville, and their fans. So, it's good to see.
On 17 for
All
you,
right,
just outside the top 16. Which team did not make it?
which team did not make it? It's funny because it's a team that is pretty much going to make playoffs as well. But I just I don't know. They get the win against Nashville, so it's the Winnipeg Jets. But and they move up 5 positions. I fear the other two teams ahead of them that are potentially not going to make playoffs because two of the teams ahead of them have to miss out on playoffs. I
Pretty
just
much.
I just fear those teams more, which is something to talk about because to have two teams not they're not going to make playoffs, right? Two of the four teams in the Eastern Conference uh wildcard race are not going to make playoffs, but I fear them more than I fear the Winnipeg Jets at this point.
Hmm.
I think the Winnipeg Jets, they played a fantastic game start of the week against New Jersey Devils. They were complete. It was an absolute demolition. But what I'll also say to that, and this is, and you love this one because the scheduling from the NHL, like what the hell is with their scheduling this year? You've got Winnipeg Jets. The last game they played before the game against New Jersey was at home 2 days before that. So no travel, nothing. The New Jersey Devils played the night before against Chicago in Chicago. Then they travel to Winnipeg and play Winnipeg in Winnipeg. So, and don't get me wrong, I get back to backs, I get all this sort of stuff, and Chicago to Winnipeg's not huge distance, but why is a team that is playing away to Chicago, then playing away the very next day to Winnipeg against Winnipeg, who's basically not left their city in a week or 4 days, 5 days. I just don't understand that. I think that's a big question on scheduling. So I struggle to put that down. It was a great game by Winnipeg, but I also have to question circumstances. You know, the Devils didn't turn up to play. Was it fatigue? Was it the fact that the Jets were fresh, ready to go? The Devils were, a bit fatigued, run down, all the rest of that stuff. So yeah, good start to the week. They finished the week strong with a win against Nashville as well. But again, for me, I feel more threatened by, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, etc., than I do against Winnipeg.
Yeah. If you tell me the start of the season, I would have had Winnipeg up top, but they really did fall off the wagon just a little bit. They could have had a perfect week if they beat Calgary and definitely secured their playoffs, but they didn't. But I
Hmm.
guess they get those points from the New Jersey Devils game. I feel like they did the opposite of Nashville and actually showed up and showed that they're in it for the playoffs. And that game they really did show up, which I was very impressed with.
Hmm.
But like you said, I'm not fully convinced with them. But I guess we'll move on to the top 16. Team we just mentioned is
Mm.
the Buffalo Sabres. For me,
Hey, yeah, yeah, it's crazy that they're in the top 16 and they're not going to make playoffs.
yeah, they're just doing a run to the end. It's just you got to do more at the earlier parts of the season. They start off losing only by a goal against Florida in a close game. They win in shootout to Detroit, having their usual issues of conceding too many goals, conceding six, and then they
Yep,
do a really good game in beating Carolina 4-3. So they did pretty much everything they could um, to be in these playoffs and play in this playoff run, but it's just mathematically, it's just you got to do more in the middle and start of the season and make it a little
yeah,
bit easier for this end of the run because they were at some points looking really good. Then they just got massive losing streaks.
for sure. And the other thing I'll say for them, like, yeah, you're 100% right. They needed to do more and all the rest of this. The crazy thing for me is they're still mathematically able to make the playoffs.
Mm,
They win their two games in hand and they're level with, Pittsburgh, Islanders, Panthers on games. They're only 2 points out of the playoffs, right? So all that takes is them to win their last two and the rest of them to only win one.
mm.
But as the NHL schedule does time and time again, how the hell do you finish a season with 4 games in 5 days? How? How the hell, NHL, how do you allow a team to finish this season with two back-to-backs in 5 days? What the hell is that about? We were joking about, early on, I was joking about making a meme about Buffalo Sabres fans, like looking at it and going, "Oh, we possibly might make the playoffs," and then getting absolutely smashed in the back by a metal chair from the NHL schedule because it was just like, I'm sorry, it would be a miracle if they were to make the playoffs. If they win their last 4 games, that's incredible because 4-5, that's dumb. I'm sorry, NHL schedulers, whoever you are, you're an idiot.
Mm.
I was yeah. That's the last rant, I swear. That's it. I'm done. NHL schedule rants are done. But I just had to point it
So
out
see you
because
next
it's
season.
disgusting.
But
Oh, until us, yeah, no, this is the last for this video.
but yeah, they one of the teams
Mhm.
that don't have issues with scoring power. They got was it like four players over 30 goals. You got Tage Thompson on 46 goals, 93 points. Like they got no issue scoring. They've just got to stem that flow on the defensive side. Um, but yeah, that's my big worry. We'll see if they can get past the schedule. It's going to be very tough, but obviously the likelihood of it happening is not that great.
Nah, but they're a young team. They're up and coming. I think Buffalo fans have a lot to be pleased about this year. They were in it all the way to the end, which I think at the start of the year, that's all you could ask for, is that they didn't, they weren't out of playoffs by February, and they're not. They're still not out of it yet. So yeah, great season for them.
All right, 15.
All right, number 15. Another of the Metro teams fighting for that. Sorry, another of the Eastern Conference team fighting for that final Eastern Conference wildcard spot. It's the Pittsburgh Penguins. I, I don't know how the hell they finished here. That's all I can say because they were looking absolutely dog shit at one point. and then they got belted by the Devils, and they've come back. They just don't die.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like they had an easier, somewhat easier schedule. Like they did versus New Jersey and Minnesota, but then they also did face Detroit and Philly this week. They win three. They only lost to the Devils, but I honestly almost wrote them off out of the playoffs after that game, just because of how atrocious it was. I think it was the worst game I've seen the Penguins play. Um, Maybe ever in my time, just because of like the circumstances, everything, and they just were not there. It was kind of disgraceful to see from them. It's not what you come to expect. But then they go and 5-1 Detroit, 4-1 Minnesota, 4-2 Philadelphia. So at the end of the day, like how much do you punish them for that blip against the Devils? I got to give them credit for beating Wild and the rest of them the way they
Hmm.
did. So look, they're in the top 16. It's very close, basically 20, even 21, all the way to 15 here is extremely close. You could pretty much put them in all different orders and be like, yeah, that makes sense. Um, but yeah, I'm not super confident with them. We'll see if they make the playoffs, but at the moment they're in the top 16, so it's good for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I think one of the things they've got going for them is they play Chicago and Columbus. That's their finish. You're literally coming up against the 32nd and 31st team in the NHL. That is your run home. You play the two worst teams in the NHL to finish your season. You're 1 point out of a wild card spot, and one of those teams that you're fighting for those last two spots with is coming up against Toronto and Carolina. So realistically, I know it's in Florida's and New York's hands more than it is Pittsburgh's, because at the end of the day, they win those games, they're in the playoffs guaranteed. They've got that sewn up. But Pittsburgh, if you don't win your last two games, you're cooked. Like that's on you. I tell you right now, if we get to the end of this season and Pittsburgh lost one of these two games or dropped a point and only got 3 out of 4 points and missed the playoffs because, you know, they finished equal on points with Florida and lost on regulation overtime wins. If you're a Pittsburgh fan, I'd be extremely pissed off because,
Mm,
yeah, they should go four from four
yeah, and
points
look,
in their
the other
last
thing
three.
for Pittsburgh, Crosby hit 1,500. Um, so he's at 1,500 points now. So
Hmm.
you got that to celebrate as well. All right, on to 14, New York Islanders.
Yeah, yeah. It's all the Eastern teams, Eastern Conference teams fighting for that
Yeah,
wild card
it's
spot,
just
isn't it,
basically
really?
wildcard central right now.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah, it's just they're 6-3-1 in the last 10. I feel like they're playing some good hockey. Obviously, one of the most consistent defensive teams in the league. They're getting some good firepower currently by Palmieri and whatnot. They start the week losing to Carolina by a goal, but they took it to them. They destroy Tampa 6-1, and then they win against Philadelphia 4-0. Um, I'd say one of the most consistent teams defensively. You can rely on that. They got a great goaltender in Sorokin. I feel like this is probably one of the biggest dark horses if they did make the playoffs that they could go on a run just because of that structure, the goaltending, and some of the players they've got up forward, especially with like Horvat and whatnot being added. Um, I feel like they're going to make it alongside Florida at this point just because they've been the most consistent through this run, and that's what I expect to see to happen, which is interesting because that means probably like you got Philly, um, sorry, not Philly, Pittsburgh and Buffalo in our top 16 that won't make it.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I think the craziest part for me is that I I know, at the end of the day, you'd rather be in Florida's position at the moment because you're a point ahead of Pittsburgh. But if you're a betting man, your money would have to be on the Islanders and Penguins right now, right? Because the Islanders run home is relatively easy. Pittsburgh run home is a dream. And Florida have Carolina and Toronto.
Yeah, but Carolina hasn't been great. Toronto's on. Oh, oh, Toronto's on the what sailing system? Like they're 5-3-2 in their last
True,
10. So I feel
true,
like
but
Florida's playing better than Pittsburgh, but I understand your point.
yeah, and so do I, 100%. This is why the Florida haven't come up in our rankings yet, and you know, but for me, it's just the best performing team out of the other or the four teams fighting for these spots may actually be the one that misses out, and it it'd just be very interesting. I think Panthers will get it done. I think they'll have enough firepower about them to sort of at least pinch a point from Toronto and at least, get one win and, an overtime loss or something against the other. So I feel like they'll take at least 3 points and that'll be enough for them. So
Mm,
yeah, I reckon they'll get it done, but it is interesting that the better performing team and the one that I'm probably most afraid of going into the playoffs, could get kicked out because of who they're playing in their last two games.
mm. I would like to say that they've only got like three players with over 20 goals in Nelson, Lee, and Parise. And the one thing, like I mentioned, Sorokin and his goaltending, 0.925 save percentage, but even their backup Varlamov 0.913. Um,
Mhm.
like both goaltending, they probably got one of the best goaltending tandems that we've spoken of so far throughout all these teams. So I think if they do make it, they can shake some bushes.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen it before. Their defensive structure is what holds them in most games. And a lot of the times that's why they've gone so far in recent years in playoffs, right? Because when they've come to, the playoff series, they've been fantastic defensively. They've gotten reasonable goaltending and it's carried them through. So yeah, definitely going to be a team to look out for if they do make the playoffs.
All right,
All right,
13.
moving on to 13. I've got the team that finally clinched their playoff spot for the first time in franchise history, the Seattle Kraken.
Alrighty, I've got them there as well. I'm honestly
I
higher on them than
I
13,
was
but
gonna
it's just
say,
just kind of where they fit at the moment. Um,
yeah, it's hard, right? Like I found it really difficult sort of moving teams up, even though teams have had some big movements already. But like there was a couple of them where I was like, I just don't like you being here, but can't move you up any further or move you down any further.
mm, yeah, no, they've maybe got the colder player in Matty Beniers. That we've said their issue is the goaltending all along, and it's still like their main two goaltenders aren't over 900. Grubauer and Jones. The only one that is Decord. So he's played three
Yeah.
games, won two, and lost in OT. So do you even take him into it? um, and look, I think they're playing one of the best structured games when it works. I think when they're on, they're probably one of the hardest, if not the hardest team to beat, probably besides like a Boston and maybe Colorado. Um, and that's saying something. And look, it's their second year in the franchise. They're in the playoffs. Good on them. They didn't do a Vegas. Warranted Vegas got a lot of benefits going in, being the first one in with some of the ridiculous trades they got. But that's another story. I like what they do.
Mhm.
I feel like they should be higher. But it's just how they played out. They did really good this week in regards to their schedule, but the thing is, it was an easy schedule. They win all four, but it was Arizona, Vancouver, Arizona, and Chicago. And you can see on our power rankings where they are. So very easy schedule. It was hard to boost them up any further just because of that.
Yep. And the scariest thing of all here, I mean, they could overtake the Kings, and make their first round playoff game a little bit easier. But currently, I know Colorado are even with Dallas at this point, but they're currently looking like they'll play Colorado.
Yeah.
Welcome to the playoffs, Seattle. Welcome to the bloody playoffs. Um, yeah, I
the
that'd
fun,
be an interesting
the funny
series.
thing is, I could see them winning that. like I could actually see them winning it if their game came. If their game didn't come, I could see them getting swept. Like that's pretty
It
much where
it
this
could
team
go
is. Yeah.
one or two ways, right? They could get absolutely swept by them, or they could, yeah, they could just turn up and be like, bang, thank you very much, see you later. I mean, what's their series? They went, oh wow, that is one hell of a series, man. They
Mm.
won their first game 3-2 in regulation. They won their second and lost the second game 2-1 in shootout. They won the third game 3-2 in overtime. Oh,
Hopefully
oh,
that's the
please give
series.
me that. Please give me that series if that's what's going to happen, because oh, that'd be amazing. So yeah, look, I mean, it's I'm heavily invested in this team. I really want to see what they can bring in the playoffs now that they've made it. Because yeah, I think their road to the playoffs was a lot more enjoyable than Vegas's.
Mm.
Sorry, Vegas fans. I no disrespect.
Yeah, no
Well,
disrespect there. Alrighty,
mm,
on to I believe it is my number 12. It is the Florida Panthers, team we mentioned earlier.
ooh, yeah, look, I'm a bit higher actually.
Ew,
They're in my
ew,
top 10.
ew.
They're in my
You
top
did
10.
it. Ew. No, no, it's
I
alright.
did.
Um,
Yeah, I did do it, man. I
no,
had to. I
no,
just, yeah.
no, you didn't have to, as per my rankings. But no, they go undefeated this week. They go beat Buffalo, one of the rivals for the playoff spot. They beat Ottawa 7-2. Even though they almost conceded double the shots at 58 shots conceded, they only had 30. Then they beat pretty downed Washington 4-2. So two what would have been both playoff games, but Ottawa mathematically cancelled out now. Look, they're on a run. They've turned it on at the end of this season here. They're 6-4-0 in the last 10. They've won six. So before that, they lost four in a row. Um,
hmm
yeah, look, they've turned it on. I think they're a very strong team. I'm not still overly fully convinced just because some teams go hot, then they go cold. But this is a really big push. And I feel like they secure themselves in regards to the playoffs. I feel like they do it. They got some great players. Kachuk's got 108 points. They do have Bobrovsky, but he hasn't been super great this year. Uh, I don't know. What do you say? Like, where's their floor?
Um, oh, I don't know. It's their flaw's been the same thing all year, hasn't it? They just can't
Probably
seem
coaching.
to.
That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've said it most of the season that comes down to their coaching, because they've got a team, right? They've got a fantastic team. They're pretty solid on all fronts. Um, Ekblad's had a bit of a down year in terms, defensive wise, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like this is a team that if they make the playoffs, they can really, really cause some ruckus. But again, it comes down to them. And I mean, what better preparation than going in against two teams, one of which you are probably going to be playing in the playoffs potentially, right? Like at the end of the day, right now, if they win their last two games, they come up against Carolina first round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, you know, good
Look,
preparation for them.
Yeah, look, my concern is their goaltending. Like obviously they're going to have to ride Bobrovsky for the rest because of the Spencer Knight situation. And then
Alex Lyon, bro.
I was
Alex
about to
Lyon.
say Lyon is in now, but .916, but obviously untested in the
Yeah,
in the
yeah, for
playoffs and
sure.
everything. So that's my concern.
Mm. Nah, 100%. It is going to be questionable, but Bobrovsky is a big goalie for a reason. He's on big money, so I think if you're a Florida fan, you're sitting there going, "It's time for you to finally earn that contract, son." Um,
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
so yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting, but they're definitely a team that I wouldn't want to play first round. That's for sure.
Alrighty, you're 12.
My 12 as a team, again, one of those teams that I looked at and went, I feel bad for putting you here, but I couldn't really do too much. So, yeah, Minnesota Wild.
Oh, okay. I'm a little bit higher on them. I got them at 9. So this is where we're starting to
Oh,
defer a little bit.
no, I just not overly convinced. They, lost the back-to-back to Vegas. Um, not, obviously one was last week and one was this week, but lost to Pittsburgh and then they get a win against St. Louis, which they should be doing. I know St. Louis have been a bit better, but overly, just yeah, it wasn't a great week for them.
Yeah, like they they go to shootout against Vegas. They outplayed Vegas. I felt like the Pittsburgh game was pretty even the whole way. They do lose 4-1, and then the St. Louis game, St. Louis turned it on, uh, but they get the win 5-3. They're taking it to every team. That's what I like. No matter what, they only was it goes for this what 9. Yeah, so they only score 9, but they concede 11. Like very low scoring games in a sense. I'm I think they're probably one of the strongest and most consistent. I know they've got some gripes. But I think their power play is really good. I like the way they work behind the net when they've got like a man advantage and whatnot. I think they're a very dangerous team. I think they will do something in the playoffs. Not sure how deep they go. I know you had them winning at one point when we did our video. That
Hmm.
was a
Hmm.
while ago now though. But
Yeah,
yeah,
look, I can still see it. I definitely can still see it. They're not my favorites now like they were back then, but I can definitely still see them going deep in the playoffs, especially with their goalie tandem as well. I think their goalie tandem's
yeah,
pretty
Gustafson's
strong.
been pretty damn good, and like it's you're in peril going against Flurry, the Flower. So yeah, like
Hmm.
the great goalie tandem, Kaprizov and Zuccarello, absolutely amazing. Matt Boldy's come into his own. Even Ericsson X stepped up, kicked up a gear. Like there's a lot to love about this team, and I feel
Hmm.
like they are putting it together most nights now. Where earlier on they were being a lot more inconsistent, and definitely at the start of the season they were not where they should have been.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's why I've got them at 9 in my top 10.
Yeah,
Even
for sure, and I can see why
like
you'd do that.
yeah,
I do think they're a strong team.
like
Um,
they go up one for me, but it's not because went 500 this week. It's just the other teams were worse this week. That's why they
yep,
skipped them. On
no,
to
that's fair.
11 then. It is the Carolina Hurricanes for
Oh, that's something we can agree on.
moving out the top 10 for probably first time in a long time. And look, they've just been a little bit ordinary, haven't they? They well, 4, 5,
Hmm.
and 1 in the last 10. They're still second, in the league. Like, they are still that strong. Their run's been that good, but like this week they were a little bit ordinary. They win 2-1 against the Islanders. They OT win against Senators, but then they go and get shut out by Nashville, and then 4-3 lose to Buffalo. Um,
Hmm.
so another 500 week, and one of those games was had to be done in OT. It's just like you look at their games, they get 8 goals in 4 games, so average of 2 goals a game. And it's like I've said last time, they just needed a goal scorer. They didn't get Timo Meyer, and I feel like that's the big flaw in it. It may hamper them coming into this playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's definitely been rough for them. It's not the way you want to. It's similar to Tampa, right? In a sense, it's not the way you want to be entering the playoffs. They're at risk of losing the number one seed in the Metro now. I mean, it's still a long shot, obviously. They've got the game in hand on the Devils as well, and they're a point in front. But in saying that, anything's possible, especially with the performances they've been putting up. So yeah, look, they haven't been outside of our top 10. They've only been outside of our top 10 once, well, mine anyway, once this entire season. Once. And if I go to yours, they haven't been outside of your
Yeah,
top
I was
10.
just having a look at this. Is my first time.
Wow. Yeah. So, yeah, not exactly the time you want to be on a decline. Um, but again, they're very strong defensively. We've said we've had our gripes with their goaltending situation and also them not having that out and out, pure goal scorer. But they are still probably one of the strongest teams in the East. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's the
I'll
thing.
be
They've
interested to see.
they've got a team that's like it's like Nashville. They don't have a player that's a point a game. They got close. Like
Hmm.
Nietzsche's, Aho, like they're almost point a game, but they're not at the moment. And I feel
Hmm.
like that's why they are so strong. But they needed that goal scorer because they've got a lot of playmakers. Um, and I feel like that's all they needed was that goal scorer, or they could have added
They
to
didn't
their
get it.
goaltending. I know Rance has
Yeah.
been previously good, same with Anderson, but they've been somewhat average this year, even though they've done really well. I think what Anderson's got like what 18 wins out of 26 games or something like that, and Ranta, sorry, has. So look, they got good records. I just don't think it's fully on them. It's more on what's in front of them.
Mhm.
Alrighty,
Yeah, for sure. So it'll
you're
be interesting. But
you're
moving
nine.
on, my number nine, I'm assuming you're 10. Otherwise, I don't know who the hell you'd have at 10. Uh, so yeah, nonetheless, a
throw, throw,
team that's
throw me under the bus
rock.
immediately.
Well, if it's not, I will definitely. But it's uh it's dropping a few positions. The Los Angeles Kings
Oh no,
had a bit of
you're
a rough week.
gonna. It's LA.
I was gonna say, there's no fucking way. I was just straight out. If you had any other team down there, I was just gonna call bullshit straight up. Is there's no other team I can look there that I can go, yeah, they're playing worse than the Kings. Not that the Kings are playing stupidly bad. I just feel like they've had a bit of a slip as of late. Over the last couple of weeks, this has sort of been happening. I didn't punish them last week for their sort of slip up. But it continued the downward trend. And the worrying signs, if you're a Kings fan, it was a downward trend against your division rivals and potentially a team that you're going to play. Well, actually, the last three games were against teams you're going to play. No matter what. So it
Yep.
doesn't matter where they're either going to finish third in their division and play Edmonton or Vegas, or they're going to finish in the wild card spot and play Colorado. Each of those teams they lost to this week.
Yeah, I would say that
So
they played better than Colorado, but they definitely got outplayed by Edmonton. I feel like.
yeah,
And the Vegas game, they lose 5-2, but it was kind of a 50-50. But that's the thing, they lost to all three there. They did beat Vancouver 4-1, but it's not really the talking point game, is it? You're looking at the other three,
no.
and
And
that's why they moved down so much for me this week.
yeah, if this was teams in the East, it probably wouldn't be as concerning because it's like, well, you're not coming up against those teams until the Stanley Cup final if you make it. My thing is that this was a real chance to show, okay, boom, we're going to take it to these teams. And as you said, they weren't necessarily blown away in any of the games. Edmonton probably they weren't in it as much as they'd like to be, but they didn't even get one win against a division rival or a conference rival. So yeah, concerns me a little bit there, but I do think they could bounce back.
Alrighty, on to position 8 for me. Team back in the top 10 is the Dallas Stars.
Hey, there we go, meeting back up. Yeah, I've got them there as well.
Yeah, +4. They win against Nashville 5-1. They win against Philly, and then they win against Vegas in a 2-1 shootout. So they win all three games this week. They have been on somewhat of a run. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. Obviously, the three wins this week means they're on a three-game winning streak. Uh, it looks like this team's been kind of going around that like yo-yoing 500 era for a while. A lot of shootout OT games, but they kind of get around it this week, even though one of them against a good team goes to that. Strong team. definitely vying for that number one spot in the division, but I still have some concerns that they do go to OT shootout a little bit too much. Um,
Mhm,
but granted, that means you're competing in every game. So I like what they're doing. Really like their young stars. I feel Robertson's having an amazing season. I think he hit 100 points. You got hints and whatnot. So look, very good team. I think they're going to do things in playoffs. I think they were my team to go to the cup final midway through
mhm.
the season, just for how they were playing back then. And on this performance, they could definitely do that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and to your point with the OT, they've gone to OT 22 times. But,
Yeah,
in saying that, Colorado have gone to OT 21. So, yeah, like, it's not great, but it's not the worst.
yeah. It's just that they got eight more OT shootout losses. That's it.
Yeah, they're not getting the job done in OT, but again, yeah, does that really matter too much? Because like OT is a different beast once you get to playoffs. You're not you're not
Exactly.
coming up against 3-on-3. You're coming up against it's 5-on-5. You're still structured. Comes down to your endurance and all the rest of that, not just throwing your fastest skater out there and skating around someone putting the puck in the back of the net. So yeah, I still think the OT thing aside, at least they're in those games, as you said, and yeah, I think, yep, they've lost a lot more of those OT games, but that doesn't even matter come playoffs because yeah, it could be three overtimes and you're still playing 5-on-5. It still comes down to an endurance based thing and who can, hold out the longest. So yeah, I like the Dallas Stars. I think they're doing a lot right at the right time. Um, and yeah, I think they're definitely going to be a team to beat come playoffs. And it looks like we are, yeah, we're pretty much, unless one of them can steal top spot off of Colorado, which is on the cards. But at this point, it looks like Colorado should take it, given they've got the game in hand on Dallas. Um, Dallas, Minnesota, the two teams we picked for the cup coming up against each other.
Hey, all right. Well, a little mini inside bet there for us. Let's
Yeah,
see.
yeah, for sure,
Uh,
for
I,
sure.
the last point I'd like to say on them, I feel like they've got a really good goalie in Ottager. I feel like he can do playoff things. And
Hmm.
Wedgwood, he's a serviceable backup, but he's been playing really good this year. .915 save percentage. So they got a little good tandem going into this playoffs as well.
Yeah, it'd be a battle of the goaltenders come Minnesota
Mm,
versus Dallas, that's
mm,
for sure.
you're not wrong. All right,
All right.
P7.
Number seven. I contemplated back and forth. This team is going down a position, but I'm not sure on it because they played really well throughout the week, bar one game. And again, that one game, really questionable scheduling, in the New Jersey Devils.
Alrighty. I didn't make that move. I'm still at six with the New Jersey Devils. Still.
Yeah. And yeah, it was a real tough one, man. Like I looked at it and I went, you know, they they destroy Pittsburgh, a team that's, aiming for a wild card spot. They destroyed Columbus, Columbus being the pretty much one of the worst teams in the league, but they still destroyed them. But they made them look like they were an AHL side, basically. They were like,
Mm.
why are you even here? And then a really strong game against Boston. Boston had their measure in the first, but they really wrestled it back and
Yeah,
sort of,
I think it was
yeah,
the
it
New
was
Jersey Devils curse, where ex Devils just come to beat you, and Zaka scored the
just
two
come.
only goals for Boston. So if you look at it,
Yes, dead.
New Jersey Devils 3, Boston 0. Nah.
Yeah, New Jersey Devils beat themselves.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, pretty much. But yeah, like that Winnipeg game didn't really factor into this drop off too much. I did have a look at a couple other games where I thought, they got outplayed against the Islanders, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. They got sort of outplayed against Buffalo for a bit there. So, and just some teams ahead of them, I feel like they've probably performed a bit better as of late. I still worry. I don't know. If you're a team coming up against the Devils, this is a team that you could be really worried against playing because they just have so much firepower and they've got so much that goes right. But they could also be a team you're like, okay, young, inexperienced. Their goaltending can be questionable at times, even though their goaltenders can stand on their heads at times as well. Yeah, it's one that I'm still not sure about come playoffs. I think they could be
Yeah,
stupidly strong and they could go all the way to the conference finals. And I also think they could get smashed in the first round. And
I was
I
de-
don't think they'd get swept, but yeah,
no, I was definitely teetering with dropping them, just purely based on the Winnipeg game. There was their worst game of the season. But
yeah,
then they go and absolutely destroy the next two games, and then absolutely take it to Boston. And was honestly a great game. So
hmm
I couldn't really punish them too much. I still think they were probably one of the strongest teams in the league. My only concern is they don't really have a backup. Blackwood isn't really a backup. He won't do anything for you in the playoffs, I don't think. And then, so you're just relying on Vanacek, and Vanacek's had a great season. .91 save percentage, less than 2.5 goals against average. Like it's honestly Vanacek or nothing. Even Akira Smeed's been better than Blackwood. They brought in Timo Meyer, player they needed. He's got 13 points in 19 games. Jack Hughes is 4 points from 100. Nico Hischier basically point per game. Like Hamilton's had a great season. I feel like all those players aside, Thomas Tatar's one of the best defensive players in the league at the moment. Plus minus wise, like he's plus 40.
hmm
You got Dawson Mercer who's come into his own. I like you said, I feel like this is the team I would fear one of the most, but I would be targeting a player like Damon Severson and trying
hmm
to exploit and be like, "Hey, Devils, do what you do and just handicap yourself." So yeah, I couldn't drop him. I cheated. I had him 6 and 7, 6 and 7, and eventually I just decided that I feel like they just played that that good of a hockey game, even though sometimes they don't get the result. So that's why I left it there.
yeah. And yeah, it's a crazy one, right? Because you're right. Like if you're a team coming up against these guys, basically your game plan should be defend well and defend first, and then let them screw themselves over and
Yeah,
get them on the counter.
give the
Because
puck to
that's what's going
Severson.
to happen, and that's what happens most games. If you've watched majority of the games this year for New Jersey, they have really probably been dominated in games maybe 3 times for the whole season. They've dominated and lost so often it's not funny. It's been ridiculous. They could be very close to Boston if they would get out of their own bloody way. Because the majority of the times that they've lost this year, it's been them just absolutely dominating a team, doing something stupid, and the puck ends up in the back of their net. The one thing I will say on Blackwood is he had, apart from a just absolute shocking first 5 minutes against Boston, he had probably one of the best games I've seen him play in a long time and made some ridiculous saves. But I do agree with you in that sense that apart from that and aside from that, he's a very questionable backup. He could rock up and absolutely play his ass off, and then the very next game he could concede 6 goals that you just should not let in. So yeah, it's one of the worries for the Devils, I think. Um, how's their goaltending going to turn up, and can they get out of their own way?
Alrighty.
All right, you're number 7.
It's my number 7. So going on to the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, I've got them at 6. So
Yeah,
just
this
did a
is
bit of a swap around.
this was the team I was teetering with. They got a little bit of a better record at a 6-1-3. So like they've only lost one, last 10 in regulation. Uh, their week this week was pretty good in a sense. Like they got a shootout win against Minnesota. They OT lose on a back to back from that game against the Nashville Predators. Then they beat LA. Then they shootout lose to Dallas. So they go 2-2, but those two losses are in OT. So really, they get 6 out of 8 points. Really good haul. Um, some pretty difficult week in the Wild, Nashville. Kings, and Dallas. Like all those teams really have something to play for, and three of them are in our top, like basically top 10. So yeah, like they're playing really good, doing really good. I just think on the New Jersey front that I would feel more threatened coming up against the Devils than the Knights. I'd like
Yeah,
to
for
see if
sure.
see how the Knights if they hopefully verse LA and if they do play quick on that. But yeah, that's about it.
Yes, yeah, that's that's the one thing I'm sort of really keen for. So I'm kind of hoping that Edmonton can pip them at the post, push Vegas into second, and we get a Vegas LA Kings first round because that would be excellent. Um, yeah, it's going to be interesting, that's for sure. But we'll see what happens. All right, moving into the top five now, and a team that I don't even like. I don't think these guys have really fallen out of the top five in a while. I might be wrong, but I also don't feel like they've performed the house off. They've just sort of done what they need to do, right? It's the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Alrighty. Yeah, I've got that's where I've got them. They've pretty much been top five most of the season, for me anyway. They dropped down to seventh and sixth about 3 weeks ago and 5 weeks ago, but that's the lowest they've been for since the start of the season for me.
Mm. Yeah, I had him at 7 2 weeks ago. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, you're not wrong. I'm looking at this and it's 3 3 3 5 5 4 6 5 5. Yeah, so yeah, they've been pretty consistent, that's for sure. And that's also probably why they sit, 105 points, second in the Atlantic, like yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty solid.
no, they're pretty solid. The only blemish this week was really the Detroit loss, even though they outplayed them. They lose 5-2, but once again they did outplay them. It's kind of doing the Devils thing. They destroy Columbus, even though not on the scoreboard 4-2, but they really did destroy them. Then they took it to Boston, lose in OT 2-1, and then they just decided to destroy a fellow Canadian team in Montreal 7-1. So look, extremely strong team. It's the reason why they've been top five for a lot of the season. They're looking more better and more of a team than other seasons where they're really just relying on firepower. Um, I do hope that they like trump Tampa coming up. I feel like they deserve
Hmm.
it. Um, Granted, by power rankings, I'd say they should wash it, but obviously it's Tampa. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, they were supposed to wash a couple of those first rounds that they've had in the last few years. Look how that panned out. But no, you're not wrong. I think, if Toronto don't get out of the first round this year, albeit they're playing a very good Tampa Bay Lightning side, even though Tampa Bay are on a decline at the moment, you'd have to be a bit worried for them, right? Because if it doesn't happen this year, those doubts are going to just continue to creep in. Like everyone's getting a bit older, contracts are coming to the end with a few of their star players. What more could you do for crying out loud? Their GM's tried so many different ways to get them through it. Yeah, I don't know. It's for me, it's do or die this year for them.
mm,
I think they should get through the first round. I'm pretty hopeful
I think they
from
do this. I think
Toronto.
this is the year.
They have to, right? I feel like this year is going to be the year everyone goes, shit, what are we going to talk about anymore? Because Toronto finally got out of the first round.
Yeah, Steve
Like
Dangle will
that's going
lose
to
all
be the
his
whole.
followers because there's no more raging.
Yeah, yeah. It's just he's gonna have nothing. Yeah, what's he gonna talk? Like he's not gonna have his disappointment videos anymore. But yeah, they have to do it. I know we love to shit on Toronto about not getting out of the first round and losing to a Zamboni driver and all the rest of it. But come on, man. Like you can't be that unlucky to just go through so often without getting through the first round. So yeah, I'll put it here. They're gonna beat Tampa. Probably. I don't think it goes to game seven because I think if it
Nah, I
goes to
think it's a
game
six.
seven,
I think it's a 4-2.
yeah, yeah, probably 4-2.
Yeah, Mitch Marner only 2 points away from 100. They'll have to ride. Samsonov, I think, is their number one.
Mhm.
Murray has been a bit iffy every now and then of late. He's always positionally sound, but he's just slow um, from post to post and whatnot. So it's basically
His injuries
Samsonov's the
definitely
carry.
hurt him.
Yeah, but all right. Well, guess we'll move on to P4, and I have New York Rangers.
Joey.
So Metro teams coming out of the top five, and other Metro teams going in. Yeah, this team's just got a lot of firepower. Like, is that all you have to say? Like, they got probably one of the best all-rounders in Zibanejad. They've got Panarin, who's been amazing. Trocheck's been amazing. Fox is having another stellar year. Heedle's stepped it up on this stretch, which has really helped them. They got
Hmm.
the youngster line in Carco Lafreniere. That's honestly been one of their best lines at some points, even though not on
And
the
yeah.
points. They got an amazing goaltender in Shesterkin. Like, they got a great backup in Halak. I don't know what you don't like in this team. It's hard to fault them really. Uh,
Well, like they're even sound defensively, right?
mm,
One of their better defensive defensemen in Keandre Miller has produced 43 points on the year.
yeah,
Like
and
he's supposed to be a bloke that just defends. Um,
yeah, not today's
yeah,
age, but yeah, they beat
no,
Washington, they
apparently not.
beat Tampa, they OT lose to St. Louis on back to back from the Tampa game, and then they 4-0 Columbus. So 7 out of 8 points this week. Just super strong all round. Strong goalies, defense, forward line. They got power play, penalty. I don't see the floor. I could see them going all the way to the Stanley Cup
Mhm.
final. It's just literally they've got to go through the East, and that's it. So unfortunately, a
Yeah.
team like
So
Boston or whatnot, or the Rangers and Devils aren't going to make it.
no, 100%. And that's just the real sad thing, right? Is that unless the Devils can pinch a spot from Carolina, the Devils or the Rangers, two of the very exciting teams in the Metro, aren't gonna like one of them are gone essentially.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, the New York Rangers made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. This is a better team than it was last year.
Yep.
Their youngster line that you just spoke about, Heedle, Lafreniere, and Capo Caco, doing doing wonders, which means that they have a first line, a second line that is stupidly potent, a third youngster line that is just really strong, and then even a fourth line. They've got four solid forward lines. Their defense is really great. I love the inclusion of Nico Mikkola. We said it when they traded for him. Obviously, he came across with Tarasenko, and it was one of those things that it was like it was all about Tarasenko. What a trade, what a trade. But it was hugely about Mikkola going over there
Mm.
an absolute defensive defenseman that is just really sound. He doesn't really focus on basically getting involved with scoring. He just wants to make sure that nothing comes through. And that's exactly what they needed. He's big, he's tough, which is great for playoffs. And yeah, he just adds something more to that blue line that they didn't have. And he's now standing in front of Shesterkin. Like this team, as a Devils fan, knowing that we're probably going to play the Rangers in the first round, that terrifies me.
Oh, it saddens me
Because
that one of those teams leave in the first round. I don't think
well,
a team of that
they're probably
caliber should be getting
yeah,
knocked out by another team of that caliber. But yeah.
they're probably two of the most exciting teams in the league. Outside of probably Boston.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, they're going to get kicked out. And the thing is about those two teams is one of the things that they have that probably Boston has, and not too many others sort of in the playoffs that can say that. They have four solid offensive lines. They got three solid defensive lines.
Mm.
Like a lot of them you look at and you go, okay, yeah, you got two really good lines, one or two really good defensive lines, and then you're struggling here or there on these areas. Those two teams, pretty solid all four lines, pretty solid all three defensive lines. So yeah, it is going to be disappointing. It's kind of why I hope that the Devils can take over that number one spot with Carolina, and then Rangers can kick Carolina out, and the Devils can kick, I don't know, the Islanders or something out like that. Be great to see. Um, but yeah, anyway, move on to the third pick. That's mine, I believe. Talking about a team that doesn't have four lines and three lines in offense and defense, but they are playing some stupidly good hockey. The Edmonton Oilers. Credit where credit's due, I guess.
Yeah,
What are they? 9-0-1 or something in their last 10?
yeah, they've been on a big run. I think it's like something like 12-0-1 or something like that. So they've been good in the last 15, that's for sure. They had an easier
Mhm.
week this week, though. Granted, they only played 3 games: LA, Anaheim, and San Jose, but they win all of them. Anaheim was on the back to back, and they destroyed San Jose. So easier week, but they are carving through pretty much any opponent they come up against.
Yeah, I mean, they've played the Kings twice in the last 3 weeks. They've beaten them twice. They played Vegas twice in the last 3 weeks. They beat them once, lost to them the other time. The only thing and I'll say it again, they have been on a terrific run. Yeah, awesome. But outside of the 4 games they played against LA Kings and Vegas, they've played San Jose, Arizona, Arizona again, Anaheim, Anaheim again, and San Jose. So their last 10 games, they've played 6 games against, you know,
Trash.
three of the, yeah, yeah, basically trash. So that's my only thing. If you go back further though, they did beat Dallas, they beat Seattle, they beat Boston in a real tight game. So their wins are there, but I'm just more or less, and that's why they are in number three. They've beaten some decent teams here and there, but you do have to say they've also come up against some softer opponents
Yeah,
as well.
I would have.
I guarantee you, Nashville. Going back to that, Nashville would have loved to have played these fucking teams 6 times in their
Mhm.
last 16 games.
Yeah, I would say that I think the Matthias Ekholm trade has been absolutely amazing for them. I think it's probably the only reason they're doing this run. Um, he's played 19 games. He's got 12 points. He's a plus 25. Like he's a plus 25 in 19 games. Honestly, has it been that saving grace for like I guess he's covering a lot of Darnell Nurse. um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like yeah, no, he's just been really, really solid for them. I think it's an amazing pickup that they've done. I knew he was going to be a good, like an upgrade on what they had, but he's really outshined what he was. He's shown that he's a bit undervalued in how he plays and whatnot, and basically defensive defenders don't get seen the way that he gets that offensive like Carlson and do. So I still got gripes with the goaltending. They've got a Ryan Skinner. I don't think Campbell, like if they play Campbell in the playoffs, they're probably going to lose that game. So, and I like McDavid's got over 150 points. I don't know if like how much can he carry? You know what I mean?
Well, exactly, and that is one of the concerns. Playoffs is a different beast. You need all of your lines firing. One thing I'll point out, and it's off the back of that Colm thing, their last 5 games, they have conceded 3 goals.
Mm,
Their last 5 games, they have conceded 1 goal or less, which is more times than they have done so for the entire year. Or entire season, I shouldn't say year, for the entire season that they have all season. They've only conceded less than 1 goal or less 2 other times throughout the year. They've
mm.
done it 5 times in the last 5 games. So, I mean, look, they're turning it on at the right time. You can say that in terms of defensive. My question will be the fact that this was against outside of LA Kings twice, it was Anaheim, and San Jose. But good signs, right? At the end of it, you had only conceded one or less twice before.
Yep.
and now
Alrighty.
you've done it 7 times.
I guess on to number
All right,
two. No surprise here. No change. Colorado Avalanche. No big
probably the
changes there.
favorite in the West, right?
Yeah, your
I
favorite
know
in the
everyone's.
West, you'd probably have, Oilers up there, but that's if basically they play like this and McDavid carries. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, Colorado is probably your best favorite team in regards to the team wise. They were undefeated this week. Their only blemish, I guess, is they went to OT against San Jose, but they won it. They 6-2 San Jose again in the same on the not the back to back, but the next game, and then they beat LA 4-3. Though LA, I would say, outplayed them. Definitely the strongest. It's sad to say that ex Stanley Cup winners probably is your favorite in that conference, but here they are.
Mm.
Well deserved after a struggling season with injuries, and Rantanen's their first was a 50 goal scorer. Was it in the franchise or I can't remember what the record was, but he broke a record by getting a hat trick with it. So Rantanen, unspoken player because it's all about McKinnon and McCarr, but no, they've been firing. I don't see a flaw in their game at the moment, and yeah, like my favorite in the West at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I think, again, they're a similar team. They've taken advantage of some softer games coming up against, Anaheim and San Jose a little bit lately, those sort of teams. But again, yeah, I think to do what they did where they were so far off the pace early on in the season with all of those injuries and to come back and pretty much be the favorite for the number one seed in the Central is a phenomenal effort. And yeah, I think if I had to pick between them and Oilers, I'm going with the Avs at this point. I just think Avs are more all-rounded than what Oilers are. Um,
Where they did it last
but
year,
yeah,
right? So
well, yeah, they did. Ask them. What was it? 4-0? So yeah, I don't think it would quite be 4-0 this year, but
nah, nah.
I mean, you never know, right? But
Alrighty,
all right,
your
well,
surprise number
you
one.
know, yeah. So my surprise number one is a team from the AHL.
Oh,
We've just
oh,
kicked
oh, oh.
Boston out because like it's just getting boring having them at number one every week.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, what more can you say? They're phenomenal. They are just absolutely incredible. They're going to break the record, the wins record,
Oh, they already have.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Tomorrow,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, they equaled it, but then yeah, they'll most likely break it tomorrow. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
exactly. So yeah. Sorry, they've equaled it, but they'll break it tomorrow. So, man, if they don't, I'll be pissed. But yeah, they'll break it tomorrow. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and I think we were talking about it before this, obviously doing this video. If these guys get kicked out in the first round, this is going to be one of the most, I'm not the biggest Boston fan in the world, but my God, at this point, I don't want to see them go any less than the Eastern Conference Finals because this has been an absolute pleasure to watch, right?
Hmm.
Like some of the best hockey we've probably ever seen, some of the most complete hockey, four offensive lines working so well, three defensive lines working so well, and two are just a goalie tandem it's just astonishing, man. Like honestly, a team that everyone thought was gone, done, dusted, their years of being in the playoffs and being relevant all over, and then they go and put in one of the greatest seasons you'll ever see. Yeah. If they don't make it to the Eastern Conference Final, I'll
Yeah.
be sad.
No, it gives war merit to not listening to the experts. I always hear these things. Oh, but the experts say this, and it's like, well, the experts said that Boston were not going to be in the playoffs, and now they're the best team that's ever played in probably NHL that's ever been seen this season.
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah, you don't always listen to the experts. a lot of the time they don't know what they're talking about, and they're just trying to pick the averages of getting things right. Um, no,
Mm,
they go to shootout against St. Louis, win. They go to OT against Toronto, win, and then they win by a goal against New Jersey in a close game. So they wasn't overly superior week that we've seen, but they still go unblemished, and that's kind of where they've been at. I It's hard to fault where the faults are going to lie. I think Pasternak's a beast in itself. I actually wish he signed for more. I think he should be on McDavid's contract. He's probably one of the undersung snipers in the game. Everyone
mhm,
talks about Ovechkin and Stamkos' slap shot and everything. I think Pasternak's probably right there, if not better, because he's just a monster on that slap shot, and he does it other ways
mhm,
as well. So it's been amazing. Uh, like I said, all four lines are contributing defensively and offensively, and it's it's not what you can say about a team we spoke about like the Oilers and other teams that are going to be in the playoffs, and that's where I feel like
mhm.
they'll go a bit deeper. But
Yeah, you would
you
hope,
could see him
right?
getting knocked out earlier on in the playoffs just because they're in the East. If they're in the West, I would say hands down they make the unless they come out
Oh
against
yeah,
Colorado, they make it to the Stanley Cup.
yeah, 100%.
Mm,
Look, one of the other big things with them is they're, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine of their last 10 games and 8 games in a row have been decided by a goal.
mm,
So they're getting some, and this is against, so a couple of them are against lower opponents, but Tampa by a goal, they win by a goal. Carolina, they win by a goal. Pittsburgh win by a goal. Toronto win by a goal. New Jersey win by a goal. This is some really great, you know, playoff hockey to lead you into playoffs, right? Like you're playing some really strong teams. You're playing teams you're gonna most likely come up against in the playoffs, and you're beating them in playoff type games by a goal, right? So it's not just I just walked over them and they just weren't on it. It's every game, it's tight, it's playoff type hockey, and they're getting results. So yeah, I just can't see them. Like I know, we're talking about, oh, is it going to be a Tampa Bay, Columbus, Blue Jackets type situation where Boston go in, we're all going, yeah, they're going to fucking shit it in, and then they get swept. I
mm.
can't see it. I really can't see it. Like they are just playing some of the best hockey. They're doing it against some really strong opponent as well. Even in playoff type hockey games, they're getting the job done.
Mm.
New Jersey, Toronto, Carolina, Tampa Bay, and even Pittsburgh to an extent, they may play any one of those teams. Like they might play Pittsburgh in the first round,
Yeah. No, like
Tampa Bay or Toronto second round. Like yeah.
yeah, like Pasternak hits 60 goals. Like I'd say their only flaw, like you look at their points and Pasternak's on 109. Then the next highest is 63 with Marchand. He's the only player in the positive over point a game. But like if you look at their additions, like Tyler Bertuzzi, 14 points in 19 games. You've got, if I got it here, I lost it. It was
Dmitry Orlov,
Yeah, I've lost him on my thing. There it is, 15 points in 21 games. Like their
and he's a
additions,
defender.
and yeah, he's a defender, but their additions are playing amazing. I know
Mm,
Bertuzzi has been playing somewhat with Pasternak as well, but that just goes to show like how good their additions have been. I couldn't imagine how they made their team stronger, but they did. Looks like Taylor Hall will finally get that playoff run that he's wanted, and
mm,
yeah, like they've done really good. They've got the face off sorted. Like they've got all the little metrics that you need to look at, and
yeah.
they're on top of it.
Well, you look down their whole team, right? Like, you've got yeah, yeah, you don't have stupid amount other than pasta. You don't have stupid amount of players on ridiculous points, but you've got a lot of good players on good points that
Yeah,
you would
exactly.
take, right? Like even their defenders, Lindholm, McAvoy, good, both 50 odd points. DeBrusque on almost 50 points, Charlie Coyle almost 50 points, Taylor Hall, 36. You've got the likes of Krejci, Zaka, Bergeron, all in the 50s. And you go down to because I've just named what their top defensive line and probably their first two and a half lines,
Mm,
maybe three. And then you go and you find Orlov, Frederick, Bertuzzi, Foligno. They're all producing. Even their other defenders producing.
yeah.
Like it's not just one of these things where you've got, 5 to 10 players who have reasonable points and then no one. It's you can scroll down to almost 20th and they've produced something.
Well,
So
one
yeah.
stat I would like to point out is their plus minuses on their team. Four
hmm
players are in the negative. Strawman,
hmm
-3, only played 8 games.
hmm
Lettieri, -1, played 1 game. Zibaril, I forget how to say his name, 22 games,
Laboral.
-1. Hathaway, 23 games, -1. Um, and it's the same so for the zeros and +3. When you get to their squad that have played, 50 plus games, the lowest is +7. Like Bertuzzi and Orlov are +3 and +6. Like that's their lowest. Like
hmm
everybody's in the positive. That is how this team has four
Insane they've
lines.
played.
It shows
hmm
the whole team's contributing. It's a team. It's not like
Yeah.
the Oilers where you got a power play line and that team's going to carry you through. And I fear this team. I feel sorry for anybody who comes up against them. I congratulate anybody who defeats them. And yeah, I just can't wait for playoffs at this point.
Yeah, 100%. I'm super excited. I said at the start of the video, going to be real sad once this series is over for this season. Obviously, given that our last power rankings will be next week. However, absolutely ready for the playoffs. I think it's going to be, you know, absolutely phenomenal. I don't think there's going to be a single series that I'm not going to be interested in at this point. I think there's just about a blockbuster setup for pretty much every series, even in the West. I mean, right now, Vegas versus Winnipeg, Hellebuck coming up against Vegas. That'll be a series. Colorado, Seattle, if that's how it falls, that's going to be absolute phenomenal. Last year's champions versus the new kid on the block. There's just so much to be excited about, and yeah, all I can say is bring bring on those last few games and bring on the playoffs because it's going to be one hell of a playoff series.
Alrighty, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content. Leave a comment below what you think of the rankings, what you think is going to happen in the playoffs coming up, who your favorite teams are to make or are the wildcard spots or bail out at the last moment. And I guess we'll see you guys next time for another video.
Take care, guys.